Hey guys, welcome to the Show Up Dad, where we explore fatherhood and share insights to support dads being present for their families. I'm your host, David Mendonca, and today we have a very special guest. But before we start, I want to thank our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Tallman Equipment, your go-to source for quality tools and equipment in the powerline industry. Visit tallmanequipment.com to see their selection of tools. I also want to give a shout out to the Show Up Dad Foundation, dedicated to helping fathers be more engaged in their families through workshops and community support. To learn more about their mission, visit the showupthatfoundation.org. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome George Ajjan. Did I say that correctly, brother?
George Ajjan.
George Ajjan. Okay. Welcome to the show. He's a Gen X dad of two boys aged 14 and 10, and George shares the joys, challenges, and fears that come with fatherhood, just like many of us. He often channels these experiences into his music, and one special track was dedicated to his older son. He's going to talk to us about that. He wrote that during the early days of his fatherhood when he was facing a lot of uncertainties of being away for work, kind of like what resonates with a lot of our listeners. A lot of us are linemen, are tradesmen who travel away from our home, and we always have this yearning to be back at home, but we know we're trying to provide a different style, a different lifestyle for them, something that was better than what we experienced, right? So this heartfelt song reflects his deep feelings of pride and hope that one day his sons will look back and feel proud to call him dad. George also encourages his boys to explore music, creating a unique bond between them. Even it's something that drives them a little crazy, right? So today we're going to dive into how music, both as a creative outlet and shared hobby, enriches the journey of fatherhood. Welcome to our show, brother.
Thank you. Well said, David. I appreciate the introduction, and thank you for all that you do through the foundation as well. I mean, I really admire the dedication you put into that and helping so many other dads, because look, we're all in this together, and we should learn from each other and support each other as much as we can.
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting to get people from different backgrounds on here to just build that encouragement, build that community. You know, everybody's always talking about community. I think it's important. We call it in the Christian realm, we call it discipleship, right? So we
Right?
could bounce back ideas. And as they say, iron sharpens iron. That's what we do here, man. So, man, let's just have you take it away, brother. Take it
Yeah.
away. Tell us about everything.
Well, look, I'm a dad like your listeners, like yourself. That's first and foremost how I identify myself. As I said, I'm Gen X, and I was born in '76, so I grew up in the '80s and '90s. And I was very fortunate. I had two loving parents. I had a wonderful dad who was always there for me, who provided for me. My parents were always supportive. They always expressed their pride in us, and that's been such a blessing. And I look back now, and that's part of what we'll talk about, flipping that script, because our whole life, I mean, my sister and I rolled our eyes because our parents always used to say, love you and I'm proud of you. I love you and I'm proud of you. Okay, mom. Okay, we know, we know. But now looking back, when they say it, I said, but I'm proud of you guys for the way that you raised us, because you turned us into the productive adults and the good citizens that we are, to try to take care of one another. And I'm grateful for that. And I try to continue that trend with my own kids. So that's a lot of it. And as far as the music goes, I was raised like most middle class kids. Like, you take some kind of music lessons. I took piano lessons. Frankly, David, I was forced to take piano lessons. It
Hmm.
was like, you go to school, and then you're going to play soccer in the fall, and you're going to play baseball in the spring, whether you like it or not, and you're going to take piano lessons because that's just part of your upbringing. And of course, I cried and moaned about it at the time, but looking back now, I'm again very, very grateful for all of that. And so I was obliged sort of to take piano lessons until the end of eighth grade. And then when I got into high school, then I was free to do whatever I want. And I never practiced enough. Like most kids that take piano lessons or guitar lessons, they practice the 15 minutes before the teacher comes, for the lesson during the week. But it was somehow inside of me. And music was never really the thing that I was supposed to be doing. I had studied, I did well in school. I went and studied engineering. I went, got a job, went into the workforce, kind of as a the regular life. I wasn't perceived to be an artistic or a musical person. In retrospect, coming back, when you're now in your late fees, and something that music had carried on with me throughout my life. When I went to college, I got a guitar for the first time. I taught myself to play the guitar very badly, relying on the knowledge that I had from the music lessons that I had previously. And I started writing some songs, and I played in a band with my cousin at some point, and it was kind of a fun activity. But you remember what it was like in those days. To make it in music means, you need a record deal and a record label, and then you're going to become a rock star. So it was like there were regular people and there were music stars. In today's day and age, the way the industry is structured, it's very, very, very different. And so what you come to learn and come to realize is that if you have a little bit of inkling of musical knowledge and musical talent and you want to share that with people, it's so easy to do it now between the technology and the availability of other professionals to help you and what you can learn online, et cetera, et cetera. And so I realized in my 40s that, it doesn't cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and doesn't require millions of dollars of investment in a record company to create music that you can share with people. You can do it for a pretty reasonable budget on your own. And so that's what I decided to do. But unlike the way I was writing songs when I was a teenager in my early 20s, I'm thinking about, what am I going to write songs about now? Well, I'm a dad. And, you think about expressing your love for your kids. And the most common songs in the world are love songs, right? You broke my heart, or I want to be together, or whatever it happens to be. But as a parent, there are some wonderful examples of love songs written from a parent to a child. And I wanted to explore that. And so I've done that with some of my music. And it's been a great experience. So you talked about, you introduced a little bit, the first song of my own that I released was called Proud to Be, because that's, one day the song ends with the lyric, "One day will you stand before my grave and say, Dad, I was proud to be your son." And maybe that's a little bit morbid to think about that moment, but I think it's relevant. I'm in my late 40s now, and there's people who have come and gone, and there's people that have even frankly, David, had to bury their own children. I mean, and that's a really petrifying thought when you think about that. And so the song also has those people in mind, because the idea that a child will one day stand before his parents' grave and say, "I was proud of you." Well, those that had to bury their own children, that's not possible for them, because the child left before the parent, which is, of course, against nature. And so I think about those people all the time, because I've seen some of them in my personal life, friends and colleagues from school and people in the family. And that's a really heavy thing to think about.
Yeah.
And it's very, very tragic. And so that's a lot of the feeling that goes into creating the music.
Hmm.
So when I thought about this first song, I was in my mid-30s when my first son was born. He just turned 14 last month. And I think a lot of us dads, we like to play it tough. We like to act like we're in control. But I have to be honest, and I think a lot of dads should be honest about this. When you're a first-time dad and they put that baby in your arms for the first time,
Hmm.
for me, it was absolutely petrifying, because you think,
Absolutely.
hey, I got it under control. I went to IKEA and I was able to figure out how to assemble the crib. I made the list and get all the supplies we needed from Bye Bye Baby or whatever the store was at the time. But when it comes to the actual nuts and bolts of being a father, and they put this life in your hands, it's a very, very heavy thing. And you start to think, wow, am I ready for this? Do I deserve this? I mean, this is an honor to be a father. And am I going to be up to it? Am I going to be able to do it? And so the song begins by saying exactly that. When you're holding this baby and you're looking at it and saying, it's like when the children get older, you can communicate, but when they're babies, they're not able to communicate. They just
Yeah.
cry, or they make some faces, or things like that. You don't know what they're thinking. And you think, I'm talking to you and I'm expressing love to you and I'm whispering to you, or I'm singing to you, or I'm caressing you, or I'm hugging you, or I'm kissing you. But do you get it? I mean, do they get it when they're just newborns or infants? And so I thought all about all of that, thinking, I want to write about this and sing about this, so that one day when he's older, he'll understand what it felt like. And one day when he'll be a dad, he'll be able to look back and reflect on those moments, because they're very, very precious, but they're also frightening, frankly.
Yeah.
And so I want to encourage all the dads to talk about that, because I think it's very real. Look, we like to be tough. We like to act like we're in control, but we should also admit that being a dad is a serious thing, and it's really heavy, and it's not easy.
No, I agree with you, George. Just thinking about what you said about having your first child, man, for me, every single child, my wife at the time, she would ask me, what was going on with you? You didn't look happy. You look like you're in shock, and I needed you. And I never understood that. I didn't even know what was going on with me during the time when my children were being born. But man, just thinking about it and just having time to reflect, you do not know. It is something just as new as it is for them, and the changes going on in their body. that's what's happening within men. So women, if you're listening to this, it's not that we don't care. It's just we do not know what's going on either. As much as it's a shock for you, it's a shock to us. And I think what you said was pretty awesome because you were able to write it down. And I know with a lot of people, when you're trying to wrap your brain around what's going on, they tell you to journal, right? That's something I'm doing now. I'm doing a lot of journaling and, digging deep within. And I think that would help. And I think that's what helped you too, through your writing. Is almost therapeutic, I would
It
say, right?
is. It is. It is. It is. When I think about music, it is for me because it's a hobby that I have and it's something I'm very passionate about. It
Mm-hmm.
is a reflection of parenting. It is a dedication to parenting, and frankly, it's an escape from parenting as well because you need time to yourself to. And this is where traveling comes in it as well. I mean, I'm traveling right now. I'm speaking to you right now from Kinshasa, Congo, while my kids are back home in the U.S. Because
Mm.
I'm have to be away for work because I have to provide. But it is all of those things, and so every okay, whether it's sports or music or any other kind of activity, it's good for any parent to have something that they can channel their energy into, whether it's creative or not, that lets them reflect on their responsibilities as a parent and know the joys of it and the frustrations of it and the fears of it and the highs and the lows and all of that.
No, I agree with you. There's so many different aspects to parenting. One thing that I really thought was interesting is you talked about how it's unnatural to bury a child.
Yeah.
I witnessed that in 2020. My parents,
Hmm.
they had to bury my younger brother.
Oh,
He was
very sorry.
38 years old, and it
Yeah.
was, man, that's one of the things I'm journaling about now is having to have time to grieve
Yeah.
over that. That was during that whole COVID thing. There was a lot
Right.
of many things that were going on in our life, a
Right.
lot of marital stuff, everything, right? So I didn't really have a chance to really grieve
Hmm.
that. And now I'm starting to process that and taking some EMDR as well, which has helped
Okay.
eye movement therapy for trauma and everything. Really good.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's so freeing, right? But with that being said, you're right, man. There's so much to journaling, to writing, to making music the way you do. I mean, man, that's really awesome how you're able to implement that and show your kids and encourage them,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it's like a
Yeah.
group activity, right?
Well, it is. I mean, I had always had in my head, I took music lessons. Now I'm much more into music and creating music than my parents were. So of
Hmm.
course, for when the kids were very young, there were always musical instruments laying around the house, and whether it's getting a little ukulele just so that they could, when they were 3 years old, hold it, and while dad is playing the guitar, son is also playing the guitar, and then we got them a little. A junior sized drum kit, and then upgraded to a slightly bigger guitar and all of that. And what we used to do was, before I even started recording songs, this is when they were much younger, starting when the little one was only, I have two sons. This the younger one was only, I think maybe he was only 3. Each Christmas, we would do a Christmas song performance where my older son would play the bass guitar, the younger one would play the drums, and I would play the guitar and sing a song. So we did Jolly Old Saint Nicholas, we did Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, we did All I Want for Christmas Is You. And this was like, became a thing that we would put on social media. It was like the family Christmas. A lot of families will send out their Christmas card. For us, instead of sending a piece of paper, it was a digital recording of us performing a song. And that was a thing that we did to share with all of our loved ones and our friends at Christmas every year. And it's really funny because everyone would see it on Facebook and whatnot, think, oh my God, this is so amazing, that you do this with your kids and it's so wonderful and all of that. And I'm like, guys, you watch a 2-minute video and you think that it's so wonderful and so great. If you saw the mayhem and the fights and the disasters that happened in the house to get to that 90 seconds or that 2 minutes of performance, you probably wouldn't believe it.
Mm.
Because who's going to quit the band, and he's the one out of time, and no, he missed the note, and you're being too hard on us and all of that. So that's why I say, yeah, it's fun to play music together, but like any parent that drags their kids into an activity, it drives them nuts at the same time.
Mm. Man, yeah, no, definitely. I could totally see that. Man, just you talking about all this different music and everything like that. It's crazy. There must be something with the Gen X generation. And it's because I'm a Gen Xer myself.
Right.
And I remember my sisters, they're 7 years older than me. They're two twin sisters. They were in guitar. I was in guitar. I believe in third grade, I played the saxophone,
Right.
and
Well,
it was
look, in
just
the 80s,
something you
right? In the
did.
80s,
Yeah.
there was like the songs of the 80s, there were like the guitar disappeared from pop music in the 80s mostly. And so the solos in songs, whereas in the 60s and 70s there were guitar solos, in the 80s it became a saxophone solo. So you think about so many of the hits from the 80s, they had saxophone solos. So I also started in school band playing the saxophone because all the guys wanted to play the saxophone. It was so popular at the time. And I think for our generation growing up in the East and then in the 90s, so we had all the pop music of the 80s, Michael Jackson, Madonna, and Wham, and all that kind of stuff. That was ingrained in us. You'd be in the car with the family and fighting over what radio station we played, right? We wanted top 40. The parents wanted the oldies station, right? And then as we got older, I mean, my taste went into rock music and classic rock. And so then it became, oh, no, no, let's put on, the New York area was like, no, let's put on K Rock, or no, let's put on WPLJ. That was the pop station, or Z100 was the pop station. And my parents were like, no, we're going to listen to CBS FM 101.1. That was the oldies station. Because my parents are, they're boomers. They're born in the 50s.
Yeah.
And so music, I mean, those fights in the family were, I look back on that with fondness, because the music that I make now, all of those things come together. The music that you heard as a kid on the radio, and the things that you cultivated on your own, that you developed a love for. And it's what I think is really cool, David, is that for people our age, either you were exposed to it when it was live on TV or when you heard it on the radio, or you had to really make a lot of effort to get exposed to something. You had to go to the library, or you had to go places to find out things. What I find amazing is that for the kids, because of all the social media, they know some of the classic songs that we grew up with without. And I'm like, how did you know? How do you? Oh yeah, Michael, Billie Jean, or oh yeah, Dream On, Aerosmith, or yeah, or I know this song, and how do you know that song? Well, it was in a meme.
Mm-hmm.
And so they know some of these classic riffs of these rock songs, these classic choruses of pop songs that were written 40 or 50 years before they were ever born, which I think is amazing. So it's, in a way, it's easier to get them roped into things that we like because things are repurposed. I mean, look at our generation. We have things like Cobra Kai. I don't know if you watched Cobra Kai, like the
Yeah.
reboot of Karate Kid. I mean, we live in an age of nostalgia where all the things that we enjoyed when we were kids are now coming back, rebooted, and it's a lot of fun. And I enjoyed watching that with the kids, and telling them about what it was like watching the Karate Kid when I was their age, the original movie. I enjoy all of that, but I want to come back to one thing you said about the moms, and the dads, and it's like we're trying so hard and all of that. The thing with the moms is that, and what we lack, is that even though it's super hard for the moms as well, all their exhaustion and everything when the babies are newborns. But what the moms have that we don't have is they have like 300 million years of instinct as mammals to essentially know what to do. I mean, that baby is going to latch onto a breast and get milk, right?
Yeah.
That's what our
Hopefully.
biology tells us. Whereas us as dads, 9 months before that, we provided a seed, and then what's our role in that? I mean, in our society, in the way that we function, we have a role as fathers. But biologically, at that moment when you're holding that baby and you're thinking, does he know that half of his substance comes from me? I know it, but does he know it? And am I worthy of that? I need to parent in a way, and I need to be a dad that makes him realize that I'm worthy of what I created.
Never really thought of it that way. You're right. I read an interesting article the other day where it said that, because our roles are definitely different, right? And I'll prove a point. A mother, and a father sleeping in the bed, right? The mother will hear the baby in the next room, downstairs or whatever, whimper, cry, whatever. She'll hear that. That's her instinct. That's what God has put in her, right? Her heart for the children. Father will sleep right through that. A mother, until she understands the roles that
My God.
men
Well,
and
that's a
women
mouthful you said
play,
right there.
right? But that's an argument. I mean, seriously, there's women who get upset. Oh, he's not sensitive enough. He's not caring enough. Well, you got to understand your roles, right? It's no different than when you're sleeping safe. You're underneath that covering of the husband, that protection. You're sleeping safe. You're sleeping safely because your husband is standing watch. He hears something outside, and the first thing he says, "Did you hear that? What was that?" And that's one thing my wife used to say is that man, you're always hearing things outside and stuff like that. Well, that's part of our job.
Mm.
Our job is to provide, protect, preside, right? And that's where our instinct kicks in. You talk
Yeah,
about
we
this
have
instinct
these
and
are
all that.
things that go far that go beyond prehistory. You know, these are
Hmm.
things that are bred into us, which is really interesting, and it's worth noting. It's worth discussing because in the modern world, you know, we have much more responsibilities than that. Much more is expected of us than what was expected of people 100,000 years ago, cavemen or whatever. When these concepts first came in, it was just a simple biological expression. We have much more to do as dads, and they have much more to do as moms. And you know, we got to figure all that out together because, of course, both parents have a responsibility. We have to parent together, and that's tricky as well.
Yes.
And you know, there's I refer to that. There'll be another song coming out that's I'm gonna because I release each of these songs on the kid's birthday. So the first one came out because my older son's birthday was in March. The younger one will turn 11 in July, and there's a song dedicated to him. And in there, there's a verse in there about his mom saying, basically, the lyrics say, as months turn into years, don't discount your mother's fears. A love she can't contain, embrace her and appreciate, which is exactly kind of what you were saying. They're overflowing love and care for the child. Even as the child gets older, and that's something not. We all did that with our moms. Oh, all right, mom, fine, fine, fine. But you know, looking back on it, yes, we should be grateful for all of that, the unconditional love of a mom. And so I think we should pay tribute to the moms for that and support them.
Yeah, absolutely. They have their role, we have our role, and together, the way God designed, we have to complement each other. I always go back biblical because I am a pastor,
Hmm.
and the woman was made for man, not man for the woman. Her job, according to what God's word says, is to edify and exhort her husband. That way he can walk in that godly leadership. Because we, as men, I hate to say it, we're you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Yes, I know what you mean.
And and if we don't have that guidance from our spouse or our wives, we can go astray.
Big time.
Just like any other person out there, we need that assurance. Am I doing the right thing? Is this the way it is? Even as something as simple as changing a diaper, you're looking at your spouse like, is this the way it's supposed to be done? Do I tuck the pee-pee down so when he uses the bathroom, it doesn't spray him in the face? Little simple things that we forget. You know what I mean? So it's we definitely have our roles, is what I was getting at. And we have to understand our roles because when we don't, it gets out of order. There's chaos. There's all kinds of different stuff that kicks in. It just gets pretty chaotic from there.
Yes.
So, how do what instruments do your children play now?
Well, we started with the drums. The older one took drum lessons for a few
Hmm.
years, and his little brother, the teacher would come to do an hour lesson, which was great because normally a kid that he started, I think, when he was 5 years old.
Hmm.
Normally, the teacher was like, I'm going to give him an hour because most kids at that age only last for half an hour. To be focused and disciplined enough to do that. He was good.
Hmm.
He concentrated. So we would do about 45 minutes, and in the last 10 minutes or so, his little brother was like 3 or 4 years old at the time, would sit behind the kit and just try to copy the things, and the teacher would give him a few pointers. So the older one then switched to the bass guitar, and the younger one took up the electric guitar.
Oh, wow.
And so he would also they would also both know how to play the drums. So that worked out well for us to have a little band because, you probably remember from those years, the trouble is always to find a bass player. Like everybody wants to play the guitar. Everybody wants to be a lead guitarist and, be
Yeah.
flashy and all that stuff. But to play the bass and just hold down the rhythm is less attractive, let's say. But he took to the bass, he liked it, and that was great. So that the little one could play the drums, he would play the bass, and I could play the guitar or the keyboards or whatever.
Hmm.
And so, it's great that they have that. I mean, the older one now is in eighth grade, and I'm applying the same rule that I had, which is you're going to take music lessons through eighth grade, and if you want to continue with it after that, that's great. So he's playing bass guitar in the jazz band in middle school. Where it goes after that, I don't know. But it was a great moment the other day because they had one of their first concerts, and
Hmm.
then that weekend I was away. He called me on FaceTime. He's like, Dad, how do I find like a music online for the bass? I'm like, well, just Google the name of the song and bass tab. So 10 minutes later, he calls me back. He's like, check it out. And he's playing dun 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 the bass. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yes, yes. His music teacher, and I'm like, just want to tell you, the concert went well, and evidently he was inspired because he called me, and the teacher's like, that's what we call a win.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for
So
sure.
it's fun. It's great to see the kids because look, as a dad, we have our passions, and of course we would love to have our kids be as passionate as we are about the things that we love, but that often ends up as smothering them with it and risks repulsing them from the activity. So I find that to be a challenge. They know that
Mhm.
I love it, and so it's like, hey, let's do this together. Oh, no, I don't feel like it. Even it's like, hey, let's watch this movie together, or let's watch this series together. No, I don't feel like it. No, it's not interesting, or whatever. And so it's kind of like how we want to share this time together. And there's things that I want to show them. There's movies I want them to see because I think they'll be instructive, and they'll be either things that I appreciated or things that I've seen recently that I think would be really good for them to watch that we can discuss together.
Yeah,
And I think that I really enjoy those moments when especially when you take them to a movie that they appreciate. Like of course, we watched the Rocky movies together, and then the subsequent sequels, the Creed movies, and we went to see Creed 3 when it came out in the theater. I guess it was 2 years ago, maybe, and they loved it, which was great because when you take the kids to an activity, they're usually like, no, it was all right. They're never too cool for life. They're never pleased with
yeah.
anything. In this case, they were like, no, no, the movie that was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. I was like, yeah, okay, that's good. It's something we can share together. So now when we text, we'll text clips from these movies or whatever to remember those moments. So it's nice. That's a way that we can connect with them that wasn't available to our parents to connect with us.
Yeah, for sure. And it's definitely that nostalgia of being able to share. I know for my children, my boys,
How old are
they
your
love, I got a 9 and 11-year-old,
Okay.
and they love the 80s from
Okay.
Cobra Kai, like you mentioned.
Right. Okay.
My 9-year-old, he loves like bomber jackets, or he even got some
Oh, wow.
aviators. What else? He loves like a varsity jacket type deal. He always wears
Uh-huh.
it. You know,
Okay.
he's really into that. I showed him this movie that I really liked growing up. It was called The Wanderers.
Okay. I remember that.
You remember that old 70s movie,
Yeah.
old school movie? And he absolutely thinks it's cool that they did their hair up just right, that
Oh my
they roll
God.
their
Yeah.
sleeves. He liked the fact that they were tough, and, they rumble. And, because I share stories from my childhood. We
Right.
had rumbles like that at
Right.
parks and stuff like that. That's just something that went along. So
Well, look,
they love
listen,
hearing those. What's
I'll
that?
make a deal with you. I'm gonna show my kids that we'll watch the Wanderers together, and you watch Stand By Me with the kids. That was
I seen that.
amazing. So, I mean, I remember, and that was a tribute to my dad as well, because I remember when I was 13, the movie came out. I was around that age, and he took me to see it. Or no, it was 11. I'm not sure. He took me to see it, and I showed it to my kids. And the little one at the time, he was, I don't know, he was probably 7. He went to school. Like, we watched it on a weekend. He went to school the next week thinking he was in a gang. I mean, it was, it's like, give me some skin, like you're
Yeah.
saying, those greasers with the cigarette pack rolled up, under the sleeve and all that stuff. And it was so cool to see them get into that and to appreciate it, because you're right, boys will be boys, whether it was in the 50s or the 80s or 2020s, right?
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. It's amazing how much influence we have too, that God-given influence that he is blessed with fathers. You're talking
But
about being
David, that's because we take our responsibility. I mean, your foundation dedicated to the fact that I mean, absentee fatherhood and dads who have never showed up or any of that. I mean, our kids are blessed that we're there for them and that we don't just go to work and put food on the table, but that we spend time with them and share things with them and try to, I don't want to say be friends with them, because the role of a dad or mom for that matter is not to be friends. It's fun. Well, there's nothing better than laughing together and all that stuff. It's not meant to be, I'm always the authority figure and you're always worried about, being disciplined by me. There's always going to be a son or a daughter always fearful of a parent and the authority that the parent holds. but that doesn't mean that you can't enjoy each other's company and laugh together. So I've always tried to balance those two things. Whereas, yes, they should feel comfortable talking to me and saying, "Hey, Dad, check this out." And I love those moments when they're laughing and they want to share something that they think is funny, not just me imposing on them something I think is funny. But at the same time, I'm the dad, and they know where the line is that that they're not allowed to cross.
Absolutely. And it's important too that mothers understand that. And when you're gone, like you are on the road, the disciplines you have, the rules that you have in place, that she is still going in line with what you have set. Because if that doesn't
100%.
happen,
And there's many a time that the phone has rang where, they're in the car and somebody's misbehaving and I'm calling dad, tell him what you're doing. And there I am. Now, a lot of times it's a setup, because she wants me to play act like you're going to be in big trouble. But that's been a tricky thing, which is when I see them disrespecting their mom, my instinct is to come on very, very hard. That, you don't talk to your mother like that. You're not disrespecting your mom like that. And sometimes she just pull me inside and be like, you got to leave some space for me to handle this as well. Because first of all, you're not always here. They have to respect me on their own. They have to learn not to respect me just because they're afraid of you. They have to respect me because they respect me. And she's right. When it goes too far, then I will step in. But frankly, I've struggled with that. And she's had to your point earlier, to coach me and say, look, when I need it, I'll let you know. But other times, let me handle it. I have to also have my authority over them as their mom.
yeah,
So
no,
that's another
definitely.
challenge that we face as dads.
It is overstepping. I had the same issue too. You get upset when someone's trying to hurt your spouse, whether it be your kids or whatever, you know what I mean? And you get upset and you sometimes come with the hammer instead of the rod of authority. And I've had to withdraw that back as well,
Hmm.
you know what I mean, with my tone or
Yep.
harshness,
Yep.
55% of communication is what we portray and what they see. So I have
Hmm.
to understand that that could break their little hearts too, but they also have to understand too that when daddy's not around, you know, you have to do what mama says. She's the one who's setting down the
Hell yeah.
rules that daddy
Hell
has
yeah.
put in place with her.
Yep. Yep.
It gets tricky though when you guys are divorced or separated. That authority's out of the home now, you know. Now the authority is not there with the covering with the mama. You know what I mean? And what I've seen just through experience and also through discipling other men in a situation like that is that now the discipline isn't followed through the way it was at the home with the father,
Hmm.
and the mom's getting really laxed on it, and there's chaos, and it just gets pretty awful from there. And they also got to understand too, whenever the children see that something's different, there's a separation, mom's no longer under the authority of the father, they don't know how to express that. They just know that they're hurting. They see something's wrong because it's buried inside them. They know that this is the way the order is that God has created men and women, right? And when they see that and there's that separation, they can't express that and it comes out in anger. And it's our jobs as fathers to be able to disciple them and walk them through that pain and let them know, hey, I understand this is not God's order and this is the way you're feeling that way, but you are not your spouse, you are not your parent. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? This is the way God designed this and this is the way you're feeling and you're not that. You know what I mean? There is still order and this is what God calls people to do. And just kind of walking them through that. That way they understand and they don't have that root of bitterness and resentment that a lot of kids who go through separation and divorce are feeling right now. They know something's wrong, they just don't know how to express it. And it
Yeah.
falls back to that breakdown in the family.
Yeah. Well, look, that's on theory that applies to me. The kid's mom and I divorced back in 2018, but in the friendliest and most amicable possible way. So we maintain a co-parenting relationship with them, and so when it comes to mom and dad as a parenting unit, there's no daylight there whatsoever. And to the point where even then, when I see them disrespecting their mom, I step in, and like I said, sometimes you're saying, you have to leave me some room there to develop my own authority. They need to understand that. And I think another thing that's important to note is, as men, there are men who behave very, very badly. And one of the things I learned is that absent people who have severe problems and are psychopathic or sociopathic. The problem is not in a person. The problem is the behavior of a person. So whenever the kids are misbehaving, I make an effort whenever possible to tell them it's your behavior that's shameful. It's your behavior that's wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just that your behavior is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you extrapolate that to the way men in general in society treat women, and women who are in abusive situations, or men who take advantage of women, and this tendency that, all men are to blame for that. And so what I tell my kids is, look, we are men. Any other human being that by accident of birth shares the same sexual anatomy as you misbehaves, it's not a reflection on you. It's a reflection on them and their behavior. And so you never, ever, ever apologize for being a man. You apologize if your behavior is out of line, if you've wronged somebody. And you are responsible to be respectful to all people, and especially to women. But if you go out of line, you apologize for behavior. But if someone else goes out of line and you are blamed because you happen to share the same sexual anatomy as them, no, that's not acceptable. You apologize for what you have done wrong, and you attempt to make amends with the person. But what other people do is their own business.
Yeah, that's the first thing I try to teach my kids is you can't control another person. All you can do is control the way you respond to them. And that's the challenge. I have my 11-year-old who, whenever he's confronted with, just asked, like, what are you doing here? You know better than that. You know the rules. He likes to pass it off onto his little brother. What about him? What about him? Is he getting a discipline? And to me, as childish as that might be, you have to really confront that, because what happens is you're raising and training up a kid who is learning how to manipulate, if you really think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Not taking responsibility. And that can be dangerous as they grow up.
Yeah.
I see so many adults act like children when they do not want to take responsibility for their actions.
Yeah.
And they blame shift. I mean, I see it at work, everything. It's in the workforce, it's in marriages, it's everywhere. What about them? What about me? Well, you know what I mean? And it's like, no, just take authority or take responsibility, I should say, for your actions.
It's tricky because in situations like that, when someone it's almost like you're dealing with a child. And do you not realize that you are responsible for your behavior right now? Wow, this is shocking. And it's frustrating because what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do? They're behaving like a child when they're an adult and they have children counting on them.
Exactly. And that's where I say it's so important for us as fathers to nip that in the bud once you recognize it. And the only way you're going to recognize it is if you're paying attention, you're being intentional to your children. And it's not overnight. I try to say that the correction of a child, right? The Bible says to correct your child when he is young. So when he departs later on from the faith, he'll come back to the faith, right? You got to correct him. Say correction by the way of like a tree. Say you have this sapling in your backyard. Mm-hmm. You got this sapling, it's bent, right? It has this natural bent. Okay, you want to correct that bend, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can't go out there and just put all this pressure on at one time, right? You're going to snap that little thing. So what you have to do is gently correct by guidance its path. So over time, it's starting to grow straight again in the path it should go. And that's how I see parenting. That's the way God intended parenting to be. Not this great pressure all at once. Just over time.
It's a good point. It's a good point because we sometimes overcomplicate it and we put tons of pressure on ourselves and all the expectations that are laden in society and in media and in culture. But a lot of times it comes down to much more fundamental things that we should all keep in mind. We also are tended to compete. What do my kids have? What do other kids have? What do my kids think they should have? And that's tricky to explain that to kids. You can't have everything that so-and-so has. No. And that's not so easy always to explain to them. But you hope that they can understand because they're nourished in other ways rather than just materially. And so that I think is also a big challenge and something that I always try to focus on.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's funny because I used to try to get all the cool toys and stuff like that. And my kids would wind up playing with the boxes and those cool toys just sit on They just sit on their dressers and stuff like that, gathering dust. So now I've learned that through me being an example to them of taking care of your stuff, of really appreciating what you have, they start having an appreciation for what they got. And
Hmm.
they kind of stopped asking for a lot of different things, that their friends have. My boys are boys. They're different than girls. They're content with going in the backyard. They love our family walks. We go on family walks at
Oh,
night,
cool.
and
Nice.
we call it the garden because it's like this garden out here that we have, and we just walk through, and there's beautiful flowers and everything like that. Well, anyhow,
Cool.
long story short, they go with us, and they just destroy stuff. That's all they like to do. They smash rocks, break mud clogs and stuff like that. Get sticks, pick up rocks. They just love that. They'll run, they'll jump. It's just stuff that boys
David, it's
need.
amazing when you take away the iPad for an hour, what they'll find the time and energy and the ingenuity to put together. I mean, it's crazy. You put them outside, and I wonder one time they found all this bamboo in the back. We were at my parents' house. They found all this bamboo, and they built this whole fort. And I'm like, wow, they should send you outside and put the iPad away more often. That was great.
I think it's pretty cool too, because we lived in a very, very unique time, you and I, and we had that outside where it just for us to stay in. I know for me, if I had to stay in the house, I was in trouble.
Right.
I wanted to be outside. We'd stay out there for all hours. We knew our street light because we didn't have watches. So if we knew if the third street light on the street came on, then that means you needed to get your butt home,
Right.
etc. Right. And I tell my kids, like, playing ninja, running down the walls, and we'd be throwing rocks at each other to see if you made it down the wall, and man,
Uh-huh.
I tell them, like, sometimes I got hit in the head, and I'd wake up and I'd be dried blood and everything like that, and no one said anything. I'm not encouraging them to go do that, but man, you were outside, you're digging in the side of the ditch, you're making caves, you're sharpening, like you said, bamboo. There's some lady that had some bamboo there and would go and break it, and we'd sharpen it and make spears for our fort and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Uh-huh.
All the cool stuff.
Yeah. I remember you talk about like the lights on the street. We had a neighbor, and, in the summertime when it got to be 9:30, 10 at night, and she was able to whistle with her fingers, that would go through the whole neighborhood. And that was the sign that was like, okay, it's time to go home. And whistled with her fingers, guys, you better run home right now. And we would go home. But, that's how it was. I know those were, I guess, simpler times. That was great. And, in the neighborhood where I grew up, it was a dead end, but then they were connecting another road. So they had what they called a clearing, which is where they were clearing out all the trees so they could build a street continuing there. And so we had dumpsters full of material to go play with, and, all this construction zone and mud and everything. I mean, it was just like, it was a dream. We'd go in the
Mhm.
dumpster, smash all these pieces of styrofoam, and we'd steal wood and go and build forts with it. I mean, it was the 80s, man. I mean, what can I tell you?
Oh yeah, I remember that movie Rad came out, and I thought I was a BMX champion, man. And holy smokes, I fell off this ditch embankment and probably fell about 20 feet. Landed on sand, and my bike body slammed me. I'm surprised it didn't push the handle right through my chest. But
Unbelievable.
you lived.
He's
You
really
know what I mean?
crazy. Yeah, yeah,
It's pretty cool to be able to share those stories. Like,
yeah.
we call dinner time talks, and we'll be
Uh-huh.
having dinner. My kids will sit around the table, and they'll ask me questions about, hey, Dad, so do you remember that one story you told us where you were riding your bike and the chain fell off and you fell off the ditch and you got body slammed? Can you tell us that one? And they want to hear about those stories,
That's funny for us. Those are when well, not anymore because they're older now, but like a few years ago, like putting them to bed at night. And it was, tell me a story, a true one. It has to be like a true story, like that. Like, okay, all right, I'm gonna tell you the time that no, you already told that one. Tell us another one. Okay, the time that your Aunt Vanessa did whatever. No, 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 I already know that one. And I'm like, God, I need to come up with more stories for these, more true stories for these things.
Yeah, it's funny. It's pretty interesting that it just goes to show you that they really, really love you, and they hang on your every word. They do. And everything that we've gone through, from children to now, they want to know. That just goes to show you that they want to know you. They want to know who you are as a father,
Hmm.
who you were, who you were as a child. I mean, that's something I'm starting to think about now. It's like, who was my father as a child? Like, how did he act? Like, what did he do? And I used to love, he'd tell us some of the similar stories, right? About riding bikes and everything like that. But a lot of his stories too were laced in pain and, his
Mhm.
father and everything like that too. But man, the good stories you tell us, they really stuck in my head,
Oh, yeah.
even like that movie you talked about, Stand By Me. That's how he grew up. And that's
Right.
how we grew up too. Me and my younger brother, they would shave our heads in the summer. That way we didn't have to get a haircut. We would wear
Yep.
white little t-shirts, you know what I mean? And they'd send us to recreation and we'd go play all day. And, we'd be sunburned. Our nose would be peeling with our little freckles and our ears would be all burnt up. And no one put sunscreen or anything on you. That's just what you did. You went and played baseball and
Yeah.
stuff.
You bring me back again to the second song that's dedicated to my younger son, and there's a lyric in there where it's saying, after the part where it says, your mom loves you so much, embrace her, appreciate all the love she has for you, and then it says, and I will teach you all I can. Think me a hero, but I'm just a man.
Mm,
Because again, it's that humility as a dad. Like, yeah, they look, wow, my dad can do everything like that. When we were kids, wow, dad can do everything. Dad has the answers for everything. But we're fallible too. And so, I want them to see that. Like, I'm not, I'm going to try my best. Always tell them, don't look at me as a perfect person. I'm going to do my best for you. And when I'm wrong, or when I react badly, I will also apologize. That's okay. But
yeah.
yeah, think me a hero, but I'm not, yes, I would love to be a hero. That would be a wonderful honor for you to see me that way. But in the end, I'm just a dad and I'm just doing the best that I can because I love you.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful message. You're right. I think one of the things that I really keyed off there was that forgiveness part, showing that humility. They have to see that because once again, like we're talking back about taking responsibility, when we fail to emulate that to them, when we fail to show them that, hey, we're not perfect, we
Hmm.
have shortcomings too, ask for forgiveness. I don't say sorry. I do not believe in the word sorry. Sorry to me is like I took your space, I bumped into you at a grocery store, whatever. But really going
Okay.
to them and asking for forgiveness and being like,
Right.
look, forgive me. I messed up. I shouldn't have talked to you that way, or I
That's a
shouldn't
good
have.
point. That's a very good point, David. That's a very good point.
So I,
It's not just semantic. You're right. That is something to keep in mind.
yeah, so that's what I've been implementing with my children is just asking, being humble enough to go to and ask them for forgiveness and showing it to them and then understanding that, hey, they're in training. Guess what? Me over time, that process of me doing that, they will grow up to be human beings
Yep.
to ask for forgiveness too. Right.
Absolutely. That's great.
Yeah.
That's
Cause
really great.
man, there's so many people, like I said, who are adults who will refuse to take responsibility and ask for forgiveness.
Hmm.
And it's sad. You know,
Yeah.
it truly is.
Yeah.
But man, so earlier in the introduction, George,
Yes.
you talked about some uncertainties of being away from work. Our podcast
Yes.
is situated around a lot of men that are working away from home, providing a better life. So, what was some of the uncertainties you had being away from work, if you don't mind?
Well, yeah, when you're away, you're doing that because you're building up your career, you have certain goals of where you want to get to. And at the time, it was a transition because prior to that, I, got engaged, got married, and it was a pretty swift cycle of within two
Yeah.
years, all of those things happened. Whereas before that, it was okay. We were dating, we were a couple, but okay, I have work to do in other countries. I'm going to be away for the next 2-3 weeks, and then I'll come home and spend a week with you, and then. And she had her own life and her own job, and so that was easy at that time. Then suddenly, almost overnight, or within a matter of a year, all of that shifted completely around, and it's like, wait a second, I'm still on the certain career path, and I'm trying to accomplish things, but now I have other responsibilities that I didn't have before. And it
Mm,
was tough to try to navigate all of that. And in the end, you realize like you have to put your family first. And even if you manage to do that, I mean, I got to the point where over time I would be away probably a quarter of the, I'd be 20 and 25% of the time on average. And I
mhm.
found like that was, but there's things that you miss. I mean, for example, this year was the first year that in 14 birthdays. This was the first birthday that I wasn't there for my older son's on his birthday. Okay, I could beat myself up over that, but in the end, you can make excuses just a day or whatever. But those are things that, as a dad, that weigh on you because you want to be there. You want to feel like you're present every day, that you're seeing the stuff that happens when they come home from school, what's going on with them, not just, okay, what grades did you get and all that stuff that you can measure in numbers, how tall are you now? And, what did you do and what activities did you do? But it's not measuring the day-to-day emotional health of the child and what they're experiencing, what they're going through, and just being there to smile at them, pat them on the head, go play catch with them, watch a series with them, drive them to their friend's house, whatever it happens to be. Those are the things that you miss when you're away. And some dads have it really, really rough. They've got to be away a majority of the time, and it's really not easy. My heart goes out to them. This year is a particularly tough one for me with a career move that I made. I'm away more than I would like to be. It's a temporary situation. I don't worry about it so much because my kids are older now and they're able to be reasoned with. I explain, listen, guys, I love you. I would love to be here more, but right now, these are the needs that we have as far as family goes and take care of you. This is something that I have to do right now. If they were, instead of 14 and 10, if they were 10 and 6, that would be a much harder thing for them to swallow. Like, I'm 6 years old. How come my dad suddenly is away 80% of the time?
Yeah.
So it's tricky, but coming back to the music thing, there's one of the great drummers of rock named Bill Bruford. And I remember there was an interview where he talked about this being on tour in a rock band and touring around the world. He said something like, it doesn't matter how many days you're gone. It matters that you come home on the day you told your kids you're coming home. Now, okay, that maybe that's an easy way to say it, because I think it does matter that you're away a lot of the time. But assuming that the kids are old enough to understand that their dad has a responsibility that goes beyond just being at home all the time, yeah, that's true. Live up to your commitments. If you told them, I'm going to be away, but here's when I'm coming home, then yeah, you better make it when you said you would, so that they learn to trust you.
Man, I like that. Yeah, no, definitely. It's about building that trust. And one of the things we say on the podcast is that trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well
you
said.
definitely don't want to, lose that trust once you're starting to build it, because it takes a very, very long time. And that goes with both mom and dad. You know what I mean? Once that trust is gone with the children, you got an uphill battle.
Big time.
Big time. One of the things that I was told is that kids are very black and white. You know what I mean? And they see life the way they see it and how they understand it through their lens. And we're discussing this, and one of the guys says, well, what they say about kids and drunks, right? I was like, what? He's like, oh, those are the only two that tell the truth. And I said, yeah, it makes sense. They'll tell you the truth according to the way they see it, where they perceive it, the way they understand it. And there's no one else who can change that for them. That's what they believe is what they believe. That's how important it is for us as parents to be really careful with what we do. But thank you.
I'm reminded of, I want to leave you with a quote from which was a really cute movie called Ricky and the Flash, which again, it happened to be about with Meryl Streep and Rick Springfield, where Meryl Streep plays this lady who basically left behind her kids and left being a mom because she always dreamed of being a rock star. And here she is, like, in her 50s, and she has kids who are now in their 20s getting married and getting engaged, and she's still trying to make it as a rock star. And Rick Springfield is her bandmate and their kind of boyfriend, girlfriend. And then she starts feeling bad because she goes and sees her kids again, and things go off the rails. And then she's like, oh, I hurt my kids. And she's crying about this. And Rick Springfield's character goes, that's what you're worried about? He's like, because you think you've let your kids down. It's not that your kid's job to love you. It's your job to love them. And it's a real, I'm explaining it badly, but it's a really cute scene in the movie. But I think, yeah, that's true. The kids, kids are, as you say, they have a simple way of looking at the world, and they're focused on what they want. I want this toy, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. And it's not always easy for them to process that. Mom and dad have other things going on that might make it hard to serve exactly what they want when they want it. But, we still got to love them unconditionally, and they love us back. And, coming back to what we said at the beginning, if we're lucky and we've done it right, one day they'll look back and say, Mom and Dad, I was proud of you. I'm proud of you for the kind of dad that you were. And that's what I carry around with me. That's what I hope for, if nothing else. All the rest of this stuff that we do
Yeah.
in the end doesn't mean much. It's like, what do you leave behind? You leave behind the love that you gave your kids and the example that you gave them, and you hope that they will say, "Yeah, thank you. I'm proud of you too. You were a great dad."
Yeah, that's what we all should strive for, is for them to be able to say that. Yeah, that's beautifully said, man. Thank you, George, for coming on our
Thank you,
podcast,
David.
brother.
Really great to see you. Thanks again for all the work you do with the foundation and supporting other dads. And it's great to be part of this as well. And I wish you the best with your ministry and with the podcast. Keep it going, man. It's terrific.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. And if anybody wants to get a hold of you, it'll be on the show notes. You want to go ahead and share how they get a hold of you if they want to talk to you?
Yes, well, my last name is Ajjan, Ajjan. So I go by the name The Agency, which is like as if real estate, The Agency. You can find me on all the social media platforms. And if you're a dad and you're looking for some music that reflects fatherhood and the things we talked about, the struggles of being a dad, the fears that you have being a dad, the love, the unconditional love you have for your children, and the lessons you try to impart upon them, I think some of my songs touch upon those things. And I write them for myself because it's my way of processing all of those feelings. I dedicate them to my sons because I love them and they're the ones that inspired them. And if anyone else listens and says, "Wow, that made me feel good. That illuminated something for me," I would be so, so happy. And, as an artist, that's anyone who does anything creative, that's what we hope to do. We do it for ourselves, but we hope that other people find meaning and joy in it as well.
All right, on. Thank you, George, for coming on here,
Thanks,
and
David.
we'll be talking to
Appreciate
you
it.
soon, brother.
All right, man. Take care.